For centuries, Africa appeared in books written by people who had never once listened to anyone who actually lived there. It was scenery, a darkness, a place where European heroes went to have their souls tested. And then, in 1958, a young Nigerian teacher wrote a novel that did something startlingly simple and startlingly radical. He told the story from the inside. That book was Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, and world literature never quite recovered. It begins in Umuofia, a cluster of Igbo villages in what is now southeastern Nigeria, in the 1890s, before the British arrive. And the very first thing Achebe does is, quietly. The whole argument of the book, he simply shows you a civilization that works. There are courts and laws, gods and priests, marriage customs, harvest festivals, wrestling matches, debts, proverbs, and jokes. It is complex, ordered, and completely self-sufficient. Nobody in it is waiting to be discovered. Into that world he places one man, Okonkwo, and he is famous. As a young man, he threw the greatest wrestler in 9 villages, and he has built everything since on that victory. 3 wives, a large compound, a full barn of yams, titles earned by his own sweat. He is respected and feared, and underneath all of it, he is terrified of one single thing, becoming his father. Unoka was gentle, musical, and by his people's standards, useless. A man who borrowed money he never repaid and died in debt and disgrace. Okonkwo has spent his whole life sprinting in the opposite direction, and it has hardened him into someone who equates gentleness with weakness and crushes every soft thing in himself before anyone can see it. He beats his wives, he is harsh with his children, and Achebe does something remarkable. He refuses to make Okonkwo either a hero or a villain. He shows you exactly why the man became this way, and excuses none of it. Then the story hands him something tender and takes it away. A neighboring village, to avoid war, surrenders a boy named Ikemefuna, who comes to live in Okonkwo's household, and over 3 years becomes like a son. Bright, warm, the kind of boy who calls Okonkwo father and means it. Okonkwo secretly loves him more than his own children, which is exactly what makes what happens next so terrible. The elders decide the boy must be killed, and a respected old man warns Okonkwo to take no part in it. The boy calls you father, stay out of it. Okonkwo walks into the forest with the group anyway, and when the terrified boy runs to him crying for help, Okonkwo cuts him down because he is afraid of being thought weak. That is the true axis of the whole book. Not colonialism, not yet, but a man murdering the boy he loved to protect an image of himself. From that moment, everything he touches begins to break. Soon after, his gun accidentally goes off at a funeral and kills a clansman. And though it's an accident, the law is the law. He is exiled for 7 years. And it is precisely while he is away, unable to defend the world he knows, that something new arrives in Umuofia. Missionaries, white men with a new god, who ask, politely, for a patch of land, and are given a corner of the evil forest in the expectation that their god will strike them dead within days. Nothing happens. They build, and people begin to listen. And here Achebe is at his most honest, because it is not the powerful who convert first. It's the outcasts, the mothers of twins whose babies had been left to die by custom, and the untouchables, the very people this society had already thrown away. Umuofia was never a paradise, and the new religion found its first foothold in exactly the cracks its own cruelties had left open. When Okonkwo returns from exile, he comes back to a village he no longer recognizes. The church has taken root, the British have brought courts and a district commissioner and armed men, and the thing that horrifies him most is that his own people will not fight. They talk, they wait, they accommodate. The tension finally snaps when a convert tears the mask from a masked ancestral spirit, the most sacred thing the culture has, and the villagers burn the church down. The British arrest and humiliate the leaders, Okonkwo among them. He comes out shaking with rage, certain that war is coming. And at the village meeting, when a British messenger arrives to order the gathering to break up, Okonkwo does the only thing he has ever known how to do. He draws his machete and kills the man. Then he turns and watches his own people let the other messengers escape. In that instant, he understands completely that Umuofia will not fight. The world he spent his whole life making himself strong for is already gone. And so the strongest man in the village goes home and hangs himself, which, in his own culture, is an abomination, leaving his body unclean and untouchable to his kinsmen. The man who spent every hour terrified of dying like his disgraced father dies in the most disgraceful way his culture can imagine. Then Achebe delivers the coldest final page in modern literature. Without warning, we are pulled out of the story and into the head of the British district commissioner who looks at Okonkwo's body and thinks about the book he himself is writing about pacifying these people. This whole man, the wrestler, the father, the grieving murderer, the tragedy we have just lived inside for 200 pages, would make, he thinks, a reasonable paragraph. Perhaps not even a paragraph. And the book he'll write, he decides, will be called The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger. That final devastating move tells you everything about why Achebe wrote the book. As a student, he had read the celebrated European novels about Africa and realized, with a shock, that he had always instinctively sided with the white sailors, and that the Africans on the page had no language, no faces, no inner lives at all. His answer wasn't an argument. It was this novel, a full, complicated, self-governing African world with its own beauty and its own cruelty, seen at last from the inside. He wrote it out by hand, in a single copy, and very nearly lost it forever to a London typing agency that set the strange parcel from Africa aside and forgot about it. It survived, sold more than 20 million copies, was translated into dozens of languages, and opened a door for generations of writers who had been told their stories weren't literature. So read it because it did something no book had done. It took the pen back. And read it because, quite apart from its importance, it is a small, perfect, devastating tragedy, barely 200 pages, moving with the plainness of folklore, and then taking your legs out from under you. Okonkwo is not a good man, and you will grieve for him anyway. And that final paragraph, a whole human life shrunk to a footnote by a man who never even learned his name, will stay lodged in you long after you close the book.